We're in chapter 2, lesson 4. So you can open that on your book. And this is using the history panel and editing code. Dreamweaver offers you a lot of features that allow you to control mistakes. And one of those things is your history panel. So if I have a page in here, I'm going to open a new page. And let me see, this is under the Strap Umbrella, my Strap Umbrella site. And I'm going to go to the window. As you see on my panel area, I don't have my history panel in there. So under window, I'm going to go find that up, which is right here in history. And once that opens on the other window, I'm going to drag it over. And I'm going to leave it here because I usually don't use the history panel too much. But right now you're going to notice that my history panel is actually empty. There's nothing in there. The history panel works by recording the steps that you made on a slider bar. So if I go in here and I start typing some text, okay, I'm going to say line 1. You notice how on the history panel I have an entry now. And as I go and progress on my work, say I type enter, the slider, the history panel start being populated. Oh, he knows that I added a new paragraph, and so on. It's just starting doing a lot of things. I'm going to put some letters, P-I-L-K-M, and all the while my history panel starts getting pretty populated. I'm going to try to click and drag this thing. No. I can't. I can't resize this thing. Forget. I just wanted to show you that there's a scroll bar, so this actual steps, actually there are more steps than this. You're just seeing the latest one. Say you made a mistake somewhere along the page and it's not right. You can use the history panel to actually go correct that thing. And the way this works is all you need to do is drag the slider to the step that you want to retrace. Let's see if I can do this with my fingers here. No. Oh, there you go. I got it and I let go. Okay, see my screen here on this side, how the changes are being undone as I drag upwards. And I'm retracing using the history panel. Okay? By default, your history panel, I think, is set to remember 50 steps. If you go to Edit, Preferences, a dialog box is going to pop up. And you're going to see there on the top, on the bottom here, on the general category, that you can actually set the number of steps recorded in the history panel. And by default it's 50. You can crank that up to whatever. The problem is that the more steps your history panel keeps track of, the more space in the memory is going to take. So eventually you may bog down Windows as it is. And if you can't figure out that you made a mistake in 50 steps, then I don't think the history panel can really help you that much. Okay? The history panel is something short and simple. There's a problem with the history panel that you may have, which is the history panel cleans itself up on each time you start Dreamweaver. So I made these things here, and the history panel is populated like this. But if I shut down Dreamweaver for today and I leave, and I come back the next day, and I start working again, history panel is going to be empty again. It's going to forget everything that you did the day before, the session before. Okay? So that information doesn't save from session to session. In lesson 4, it's going to tell you to do some things. And it's going to tell you to use the history panel to undo or redo those steps. The problem is that if you get to step number, look in the book here, on book on page 2-26, you're going to have 7 steps in here. You're going to do a whole bunch of stuff. But say you get to step number 4, where you change the width of the horizontal rule to 900. And you change the alignment to left. And then the bell rings, you save your work, you shut down Dreamweaver, and you leave. And the next day you come back and you say, oh, I stopped on this page on step number 4. And now you're going to try to do number 5, and you're able to because you're not using the history panel. But on step number 6, it tells you to drag the slider up to the alignment. And guess what? You don't have those anymore because you shut down Dreamweaver in between step number 4 and step number 6. Okay? So how do you solve that? How do you actually complete that exercise? If that's the case, you won't be able to do exactly the way book says, but you know what the book's trying to do. The book's trying to undo the alignment and stuff like that. So even though you cannot access those steps on history panel, you're going to actually have to go to the property inspector in the bottom and do that. Just do it. Just make it happen the way the book wants. The book wants the alignment set to left and a bar that is 900 pixels. So make it happen whichever way you have to do. Any questions there? No questions? On page 227, you start using the code inspector. And the code inspector is something that you don't see unless you're working in a code view. So look at my screen. You know that in every HTML file that you create, Dreamweaver is actually generating HTML code in the background. And what they want to do in this, I'm going to go to Window. My code inspector is also not open. So I'm going to go find it. It's towards under frame. Okay, so I'll click on it. And the code inspector pops up, as always, on the other screen. So let's go fetch it. And I don't need the history panel, so I'm going to close it down. You're going to notice that this thing really looks a lot like what you see in the document window. Okay? But the code inspector does a few things that the other one doesn't, which allow you to look up information about code. I think all they want you to do is they want to show you that you have these options. Just like, for those of you guys who do programming, this is basically a compiler editor kind of thing. Okay? You can program this thing to show you different features, to highlight syntax, reserve keywords, that kind of deal. Just much as Dr. Java or TextPad would do. Or Visual Studio, for that matter. And they actually tell you to go and use the property inspector to change the width of the horizontal rule. He also shows you that you can actually use something called the reference panel. Let's see, where is that? Oh, it's in the bottom here. And the reference panel, it gives you information, syntax information, on every single tag, HTML tag. And it bases its information off of a reference book called O'Reilly HTML Reference. But you can actually change that source of information to something else. They have several of them. And this is all programming stuff, and chances are, unless you go heavy into programming your web pages for additional functionality, you never use this. Okay? But if you become a web programmer and you're writing programs to run off of your web pages, then this is showing you that DrCS5 comes with a dictionary, a reference source built in for programmers and web developers. There's some very powerful stuff there. And then something that everybody has a problem is on page 229 is the insertion of a date object. So I'm going to go back to design view here, I'm going to put my insertion point behind the eye, under the eye, and I'm going to go to the insert. Oh, I'm sorry, no, I don't need to go there, although it's there as well. On your common bar list arrow, insert bar, you're going to find this guy here. And this is your data object. If you click on it, what that's going to do is going to give you a dialog box. And the dialog box is going to ask you some information about the formatting and the manner through which you're going to insert the date. And you can choose the date formats and stuff like that. But very important, you have this box in here that says update automatically on save. I think the first time the book tells you to do, oh, they do want you. Yeah. Okay, so you do want to check this up for sure. This one, it needs to have a check mark on. Okay? And the reason why is a lot of people make the mistake of not checking this up. What that does, I'm going to check this and show you. I'm not going to check it and do it, okay? I'm not checking it. I'll click on OK, and the date shows up. This date comes from the computer that you're sitting on. It's highlighted at this point, so it's black. If I click out of it and I press enter, it looks okay. I'm going to go take a look at the code in code view, and I see that this is an actual text. There's nothing special here. I'm going to go do the same thing. I'll insert the date again, but this time around, I'm going to check that update automatically on save. I'll click OK. The same thing happens, and it looks exactly the same. But take a look at the code now. It's very different. I have one here, and I have one here. Okay? Number 1 is checked, number 2 is not. Number 2 is a piece of code that every time you file save the file that you're working on where this object resides, he updates this field. Which means that if I say open this file tomorrow, the 28th, and I save this, yes, tomorrow, as I'm done with the work, it will change this date to the 28th instead of the 27th automatically. Is it going to do the same thing here? No, this is just text. Okay? Why would you want to have a piece of code with that feature? Anybody? If I have a piece of code like that, by the way, it looks the same, but I'm going to click on top of it. I clicked right on top of the 2, and it highlighted the whole thing. That's an indication that this whole thing is one piece. If I click on the top one, it puts the insertion point over there. Whoops. It puts the insertion point in there, and it blinks. But if I click on anywhere on the second one, it highlights the whole thing. One is an object, one is not. Okay? The reason why you will want something like this on a web page is to give the viewer an idea of how updated your site is. If your website is not updated often, chances are you don't want to put something like this. If the information that you have on your website doesn't need to change all the time, then don't put something like this because it may change. It say, oh, this guy worked on this page 3 years ago. This information is not accurate or relevant anymore. But if the information doesn't change, don't give the impression that your website is old and nobody cares about it. Not even the person who made it. Okay? If the information does change and needs to be renewed all the time, if you put something like this, you will let them know that, hey, this guy just changed his website 3 days ago. He's staying on top of it. The information is reliable and is accurate and relevant, and therefore I'll keep coming here. That is why these things exist. Are there any questions as far as how to use these features? All right, let's get to work until the